Hi, thanks. Thank you very much. Good evening. It's March 26th. Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting. It's going to be an interesting evening, so we're going to get right into it. Mr. Obar from the Historical Commission's here to discuss his article. Sam?
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. My name is Sam Obar, Chairman of the Historical Commission in Walpole. The first thing I wanted to just briefly talk about before we get into the article was regarding our spending request, because I know that some of you had some questions about that.
Yeah.
So I want to make myself available if anybody has any inquiries about that issue.
Okay. I think we're going to kind of sneak that in after your article.
Okay, that's fine.
Just kind of get into the meat and potatoes of this one.
All right, so basically, Article 38, I assume you all have a copy of what the changes are. Okay. So I'll briefly summarize it. So basically, we've added certain, so in Section 2, so, okay, I'll start at the beginning. What is this bylaw? I'm sure some of you would like to know.
Why is it cool and why do we want it? How's that?
So basically, in our town, we have had a law on the books since the 1970s. I think it was 1972. And it's basically Chapter 349 of the Town of Walpole bylaws, which requires that the Historical Commission have input in the tear down of any structure in town that is more than 100 years old. Just as a little context, last year we reviewed 5 applications under this bylaw. Some of the most notable examples were a house at 1350 North Street, and another example was a structure at Walpole Woodworkers on East Street. And so basically, the law has not been updated since the 1970s. There were some minor changes that were made approximately 15 years ago. I think, and it was just small. They were just spelling changes and that sort of thing. And so this would be the most significant change since it was first created in the 70s. And a law like this is in place in 150 cities and towns across the state. Essentially, under the law, if a house is deemed historically or architecturally significant, our board can impose a delay of up to 6 months on it being torn down. After that 6 months ends, the applicant may do what they wish with it. So it only lasts for 6 months. The 6 months is supposed to allow the applicant and our board an opportunity to explore alternatives to tearing it down that may include either preserving it or rehabbing it in some form. And at any point during those 6 months, our board may vote to end it. So it's up to 6 months, but we have the authority to end it prior to those 6 months ending. So the changes that we're seeking to make, so we're seeking there are both minor changes and major changes. So for example, we're seeking to add certain items to Section 2 to define certain terms like applicant, et cetera, et cetera. So those should be pretty straightforward. We're adding in a job title because the inspector's office is now also the commissioner's office. So that's a change intended to reflect the new job title for that job. We're eliminating various superfluous language, and there's a couple typos as well, which we're changing. We also are we're adding certain words to be clarifications, like for example in Section 4C, where we added the word completed application. And again, I mean, I'm just sort of going over it fast, but I assume you've all either read it or you understand what I'm saying. And I can answer any questions afterward, obviously. But anyway, the most significant change is that we want to extend the length of the a delay from 6 months to 12 months. Now, there are a few reasons for this. First of all, this is a recommendation of the Mass Historical Commission. This is what they generally recommend in most cities and towns. We've also, and this is also, this reflects the input we've received from citizens over the past several years, is to extend it to 12 months. And by the way, if anybody's curious, I do have a list of all of the other cities and towns that have the law and the length of their laws. And then there's also a section which we've added, which is called administration, which allows us to impose certain fees related to the administration of the law. And that is language taken directly from the MHC's model law. And then we've also changed a section, changed the wording in the enforcement section, which states the fine for failure to comply with the law. So I hope that that is a general summary. I assume you'll have many questions, so I am happy to answer them.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Anyone?
Sam, on the, for general information, a historical house is anything over 100 years old. So let me make sure I'm understanding you correctly. If you have a home over 100 years old, you have to get the permit or be fined $300.
Wait, what? Excuse me?
You have to be approved by the Historical Society before you demolish a building that's over 100
Yes,
years
correct.
old.
Yep.
And if not, you're fined $300.
Correct, yep.
Is the building inspector on board with this?
Yes.
And what other higher board in town do you have, other than coming through us in town meeting, do you have to have approval, if any?
We do not need approval from anybody. We did already discuss this with the selectmen, and although they did not take a vote on it, they seem to be in favor of the general concept of what we wanted to do. We did work with the inspector on all these changes, and so he actually contributed some suggestions.
Some of the verbiage?
Yeah. So we actually have a very good working relationship with him. So yeah.
I just don't want to see it come back next year having to undo whatever
Yeah.
was put in this year because it didn't go by the codes.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Josette. Mr. Flowers.
I appreciate the presentation. It was really well done. I have two questions. So there's 5 demolition applications currently. 2 of them were deemed historically significant. So does that mean the demolition delay was enacted
Yeah.
for those?
Mm-hmm.
Have either of those demolition delays changed the owner's mind?
Well, no, but there may be. I mean, it's too early to say. I mean, but the answer is no as of now.
And this is great information for 2017. But going back in time, if you're aware, what percentage of these demolition delays, or even if you have a guesstimate, result in changing the owner's mind?
So during my time on the commission, we've imposed maybe 5 delays, and probably of those, probably 1 is still standing, but I think that was unrelated. I think that was going to stand anyway. So in most cases, but in my time, so what we've usually done, so under the bylaw, the applicant can come to our board and seek to have the delay waived prior to the 6 months. So we've actually usually entertained requests from the applicants to waive it, and we've usually voted to end it prior to the 6 months.
So that was going to be my second question. Of the demolition delays issued, what share of them do you think were ended early if the applicant requested it?
Yeah, so that's been pretty much, I would say, I think pretty much all of them at some point during that 6 months we voted to end it. You know.
Gotcha. So you can't think of a delay where it was issued and the owner was like, "You're not going to change my mind," but the commission still decided to just wait it out.
That's correct, yeah. I don't think there's ever been a time. Now, right now, these 2 structures that are in the process of being delayed, it's very unlikely that those will be waived. I think because one of them is Walpole Woodworkers. They have no interest, or how shall I phrase it? Their process of going through town boards is going to last a lot longer than 6 months, so they don't really care. So they're just gonna outlast it. So they haven't really asked us to lift it or anything. So there's no that delay is going to last until until such time as it ends. And then the other house on 1350 North Street, that's going to end in May. It's now almost April. We may go all the way to May before that, before that gets lifted. So.
And so I guess I lied when I said I had 2 questions. This is my third and final. How could it be? I'm ignorant of this process, but so I'm asking this question in earnestness. How could it be that if in 6 months you can't convince someone about how they want to dispose of their property and not demolish their structures, that you would convince them in 12 months?
Well, so essentially the process of in order to preserve a structure, that may include relocating the structure, and that can take that can take a long time to work out. So there are certain things that 6 months actually is pretty fast when you consider that we meet once a month. The applicant, we're sort of expecting the applicant to have an ongoing conversation with us during those 6 months, and it takes time to figure out how to preserve it. In certain cases, there was a situation, the structure at 1034 East Street, which is the former Fales Machine Company, the former foundry. When we had imposed a delay on that, we asked the applicant to seek a report from a structural engineer to confirm the applicant's claim that they could not preserve anything in the front of the structure, which is hard to explain. But anyway, and so that takes time to conduct. So there are certain things that would be done during that time. That and the other reason to extend it to 12 months is that we sort of want to encourage the applicant to maybe consider alternatives. It's intended as a measure to say, look, take some time to look at what the other options are, and and the 12 months will make sure that you're actually going to do that, and you're not just going to attempt to outlast it by just only having it be 6 months. So the intent is to sort of is to encourage other options, and so we feel that extending that would be more of an incentive to actually working out other options, I guess.
Thank you.
Okay. Mark? Through you. So with the process, is it totally on the owner to seek alternative methods, or does your commission actively get involved in advertising the building for relocation, alternate uses and so forth? What's your role in the process, or do you basically put it all back on the owner?
So the law actually requires, it's actually, I think, in the law that it's actually their responsibility. However, we are supposed to, obviously we want to have a conversation and a dialogue, and we do whatever we can to support them and encourage them. We give them suggestions and advice about what they can do. For example, the structure at Walpole Woodworkers, it's a house. If you're looking at the entrance to Walpole Woodworkers, the house on the left, that's what they want to tear down. Now that has absolutely no impact whatsoever on their overall complex. If you look at their plan, they're pretty much, it's just going to be grass, basically. So we said, look, is there any way you can subdivide it, or is there any way you can include it as part of your larger plan? So it would be suggestions like that we would offer, and also what I referred to earlier, which was where we would encourage them to get a structural engineer to seek, to explore various options. So, so the applicant, the onus is really on the applicant, but our commission is certainly working with them closely.
Quick question.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Just to play devil's advocate, I mean, I don't really have a problem with it, whether 6 or 12 months or something like that, but the whole 100-year-old thing, so I had a house on Adams Road, it was a 38, okay? So I know come 2038, which is still a ways away, but had I still were living there, and then, let's see, I'm not going to do math right now, just figure out how old I am when that thing hits 100, but I'd still be around. Oh, yeah, I'll still be kicking it. Oh, yeah, absolutely. So, let's say, okay, great, I want to, give it to my kids, and I'm going to go move into, Walpole Woodworkers, AQV or something like that. And my kids are like, hey, it's a 2-bedroom, 970 square foot Craftsman ranch, and, I've got grandkids, and it's just not big enough. And it reminds me of what my neighbor behind me had done. Instead of just putting on a second floor, he actually bought a modular home. The thing's built like a tank, and it was beautiful. It would fit within the neighborhood. It was, but it's 2 floors, and it, right footprint, looks awesome, and it fit their need. So, if you fast forward 20 years, and if it was still my kid's home, and they say, well, geez, Sam, or Sam of, 20 years from now, would they have to come to you and say, hey, it's more cost effective for me to and put something new that fits within the neighborhood and my needs than it is to go through all the rigmarole to somehow engineer a second floor when the foundation is clearly stone and it, it's not that great. So again, I'm just, 100 years, it's not a lot. It's going to be a lot of homes, and you guys are going to be really busy. It's
Well,
not a segue
I mean,
into your
well-
other conversation either.
Right, but the 100 years is not changing. That's in the original bylaw. There are approximately, I believe, I contacted the assessor, and there are approximately 1,000 structures in Walpole that are more than 100 years old. But we only have, but on average, we've only had about 5 a year. And of those, usually 3 of them we rule are not historically significant, and they're allowed to demolish no matter what. So so it's really, we're talking like 2 a year. And again, our commission has to take a vote as to whether or not it's historically significant, and only then would the 6-month delay be imposed.
Okay.
So basically, if that house, built in 1938 is not really, there's a lot of houses like that, so I don't think it's historically significant, so I don't think that would be.
Nope, nothing special there. Trust me.
You live there.
I moved. No, it was a great house. It just wasn't big.
John Quincy hasn't had dinner there once.
You know what I mean? No, and it wasn't like, where was it that Washington drank at on Lincoln Road?
Oh, Lincoln Road. Well, we don't know if he drank. His horses were fed there.
Oh, yeah, and he never had a pint.
One
Oh,
would
yeah,
assume he
I'm
might
sure
have
of
had a
it.
pint while he waited.
Okay,
Okay.
excellent.
Okay.
Hey, I'm gonna go to Dick and then to John.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Sam, do you know, 1,000 is what is gonna be coming up, but do you know any potential problems that have come up because of the 6 months in the last 5 years? Does that time start with your meeting or when you're first aware of it? Is it an official meeting?
Okay, so I'll actually explain the process because I'm reminded that maybe. So the process basically is that an application has to come to us, and then in the law there's actually there is a certain number of days, but at which point we must have a meeting to determine whether it's historically significant. Then after that, there has to be a hearing, which should be advertised in the newspaper, and everybody could speak at it. Anybody could speak at it and offer input, and then a vote is taken after the public hearing as to whether or not the 6-month delay should be imposed. So it's only after the hearing, and then the 6 months starts on the day of that vote.
Okay, so you hold the public hearing?
Yeah.
To make the decision, that
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with.
Yeah.
That's important. I also think that maybe 6 months is a little tight with
Yeah.
the way government works. Slow they go, and I won't go into that, but I think the year gives them a chance.
Fair enough, you good?
I'm all done.
Thank you, sir. Mr.
Thank
Lee?
you. Through you. So Sam, I have a couple questions. Under section 9, there is a blank area following the word "the fine shall be a certain dollar figure." Is there a more recent version of this?
Yeah, it's supposed to say 300.
It does.
Yeah.
Thank you. So my second question is, at the top of the page, there is a provision that says for at least, and this gets to the 12-month section, for at least 12 months, the owner has made continuing bona fide and reasonable efforts to locate a purchaser to preserve, rehabilitate, or restore such building and/or structure. So how do you measure that, and how do you enforce that?
So that's actually one of the things that we've added to the section 2, where we've defined what bona fide means. And really, it's at the commission's, I mean, the commission has the authority to decide if they're satisfied that has occurred. So it's to be, it's really up to the discretion of the members of the committee. But we've attempted to define what that means.
Well, I saw that, but it didn't really do it for me. And I guess I was wondering, it would seem to me that there should be a standard of some sort. Yes, you've defined bona fide, and it, in fact, defines essentially what the words bona fide mean, but they don't really tell us when you've crossed into the area of actually acting in a bona fide fashion. For example, where it says for at least 12 months the owner has made continuing blah, 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 blah efforts, does that mean that it must be listed with the Realtor? Does it mean that they must put ads in, FSBO signs that they're selling it, or what? It just seems as though that this is a standard that's very vague, and I'm curious as to what the standard is.
Well, I mean, the intent, according to that wording, is that you're basically, the commission's expecting that there's going to be a reasonable likelihood, reasonable efforts made. And again, I mean, the word reasonable, yes, it probably is a vague word, but it's we wouldn't want to constrict ourselves by saying, well, you must do this, 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 and this, because then the applicant may say, well, we want it to be, the efforts need to be reasonable, reasonable efforts to locate someone to preserve, rehabilitate, restore it, which is in there. But again, yeah, it is at the discretion of the commission.
But I guess I'm trying to, I'm actually a fan of historic houses, much perhaps to my financial regret. I've enjoyed living in my house on Union Street for 32 years. I did put an addition on, and when I put the addition on, I had knives, if you will, for cutting molding, replicated to match what was on the house so that it would match the rest of the house. I have wooden shutters on, so I'm a big fan of preserving historical houses. But it seems to me that if you're an owner of a house, of a historic house, and you're trying to use good faith efforts to find a purchaser, that it would seem as though it would be helpful to that person to have some guidance, such as it has to be listed with the, I mean, I think if you try and, if you put an odd, I don't mean odd, but if you put advertisement in the Walpole Times a couple of times, or every month or so, that wouldn't be enough. So it would be very helpful, I think, for an owner to know when they've actually satisfied that particular requirement. So I understand you're not changing that. It just strikes me as being something that is not in here that maybe could be in the law.
Okay, that's very valid.
Mr. Bone?
So, I agree with your concerns to a certain extent in terms of I'm not big into vague, which can go far afield. But this is existing already. We're just changing
Yeah.
the 12 and then the other tweaking, or the other additions.
Yeah.
A couple of questions I had. One of them, the commission may delegate authority to make initial determination of significance to one or more members of the commission. Does that have somewhere else defined further in the law as to how long that initial is? Do you meet once a month, or so that the full commission could vote, or?
Well, I think the intent is that, the answer to your question is no, it's not defined further. The intent, I think, is that commission may delegate authority to make initial determinations. I don't know how to describe it. It's not, it's almost like, we meet once a month. So I guess it's intended to make the process faster by allowing one person to make that to make that determination, at some point in advance of a meeting, without the need to schedule a meeting, basically. Because in order to make that determination, we usually have to post a meeting, and we have to have a meeting. So I guess this is intended to make it so that it's not, you don't have to have a meeting.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that?
Yeah. I have a house that was built in the 1800s, and it's not a historical home, it's a craftsman. If, hypothetically, if I wanted to tear it down and replace it with something more modern, I'd have to come before you. I would rationalize, you or your committee, somebody would come out to inspect, to validate it is what, I don't know, I'm asking.
Yes.
Is that the part of your process?
Yes, and that's
Because you can't
actually-
just look at pictures or have, survey information without actually observing, seeing what the building or home looks like.
Yeah, so actually in the bylaw actually requires that the applicant has to be cooperative in allowing an inspection. I'm attempting to find the section, but that an inspection may occur. The applicant would provide a brief description of the type of building, the date of the building, meter documentation, a brief description of the proposed reuse. So all of that is included in the process.
And if I do not agree with anything you say, and I hypothetically am determined to remove this building, can you enforce me to not proceed to either sell it or repurpose it into condos or something else? In a hypothetical situation. I'm just wondering how far your authority goes.
Well, I'm not sure what your question is. So basically, you would be required to go through us in order to demolish it.
Correct.
If you do not, you can get fined $300, or you can wait or if we impose a 6-month delay, then you could just wait until after the 6 months
And do what I want.
and do what you want. Yeah.
But that's assuming
Or-
that,
or at
well, if
12
you
months.
deemed her house not historical, then
Yeah, or
they could do whatever she
if
wants.
we deem it not historically significant in the first step of the process, then you can do whatever you want at that point.
Okay, that wasn't really clarified, or at least I didn't understand it. I don't know if
I was
anybody
trying to
else
do my
did.
38 example.
Yes.
Anyways. Ally?
So, thank you. So on the opposite, I'm just kind of reading through again, where it says a building permit shall not be issued for a period of 2 years. Those are buildings that you have deemed historical and the owner has proceeded to go and demolish without
Yep.
approval.
Yep.
2 years.
Yeah. So
Okay,
so
that's
so
kind of the opposite of what Josette was asking. So if it was deemed historical, you did not get approval, and you demolished it, that parcel could, a building permit could be withheld for 2 years.
Yes, but well, that's only if she violated the law.
Right.
Like
So
if
it's-
she, yeah.
Kind of-
Yeah.
Not Josette.
I gotta go to Pat unless you're, no, I'm gonna go to Pat and then back to John.
Follow up what Allison just said. So in the hypothetical example, if Josette being the scofflaw that she is,
Yeah.
the mouse is at home.
Heard that about you.
Yes.
When she's going before your commission initially, is it one commissioner can deem it as historical, or does it have to be a vote and a unanimous or a majority vote or whatnot to deem that house being a historical house?
So the changes that we are seeking to make would allow the commission to allow one or more members to make that choice on their own. In practice, we usually, our practice has been that we have it during a meeting. The current law requires that we have to have a meeting and we vote by, and it's a majority vote.
Okay. And you're trying, and just to clarify, you're trying to change it just so that one member
Yeah.
of the commission can deem it historical and
Yeah.
there's no vote needed.
Yeah.
So what's the recourse? So if she doesn't agree with you, does she go before your committee or commission and then
Yes.
petition?
She could. I mean, there's, you know, she has the ability to, well, so if it is deemed historically significant, then there would be a hearing.
Mhm.
And so the hearing is at which point she could bring, you know, experts or whatever, whoever she wants, and say, you know, I don't want the delay imposed, and here's why. And she could bring all the neighbors to pack the room and say that it should be demolished. And so you know, so the hearing would actually be the point where, and the hearing would be the entire board, and everybody's allowed to speak. And the hearing is at which point the vote is taken as to whether or not to impose the 6-month delay, basically.
All right. Thank you.
All right, so do you wanna go back to John, or can I give it to Ed?
You can give it to Ed.
All right, Ed, you got it.
I don't know if I'm missing something in here, but I just have a question. What is the definition of, is there a specific guidelines of what's considered to be an historic building?
Yes.
Very beginning.
There's a definition called, it's
Is it 100 years old?
Yes.
architecturally or historically significant structure. It's in the definition
Okay,
section.
I got it.
Yeah.
So, through you, so Sam, why would you want one person to be able to trigger this? Why wouldn't you want it to be a majority?
I would say probably for efficiency,
Explain?
so that you don't have to have a meeting. You know, so in other words, if we're meeting once a month, you can, you know, if the applicant wants a decision to be made sooner than that, then they can get it sooner than that.
Right, but it would seem to be more efficient to have a majority raise a question about the historical significance or the need for the 6-month rather than one person. That seems inefficient to me, not efficient.
Well, the language for that comes from the MHC's model law. So honestly, that's not an important issue. Like, we don't need that. You know, if that's something that your committee wants eliminated, that's fine. We didn't really, you know, our largest thing is that we wanted the length of the delay extended from 6 to 12 months. So that language, the section 7, you know, we don't feel strongly about that. We're not advocating that we, you know, that only one of our members make those decisions. But we took the entire text of that section is from the MHC's model bylaw. So apparently that's on the books in other towns.
Right, I guess I'm just thinking that so how many people are on this board?
5.
5. So if 4 people don't see an issue and one person does, it seems like it's kind of the tail wagging the dog, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, the intent would be that the chairman would make that determination in order to reduce the, you know, just in order to reduce the time, and so that the chairman would have a certain, checklist that he would say, okay, this is historically significant, and then he would make that choice. As I said, it's not something that we feel strongly about. We need that in the bylaw. That was just from the states. We wanted to take the whole section called administration. We wanted to use that. So.
To you, Mark, and then Joseph.
Through you. I think the efficiency comes into play if you've got an application and it's on your agenda, you pass it out to everybody, nobody has the background ready, but then one of your board members, arranges a site visit, looks at it and says, I think there's something significant here. You don't have to wait to the next meeting to turn around and say, I think it's historic, and then schedule a hearing for the next month. Now you're 2 months out. The person can turn around in 10 days and says, we got to get this on the agenda because I think it's historic. It's at our next meeting, and you've not delayed the process for the homeowner of getting a vote by the whole board and having a public hearing on it.
Yeah, I guess that's
What you said.
You,
Okay,
lawbreaker.
one quick question. If you have one person in the hypothetical that says either approves or disapproves, it's either historical, it is not historical, what does the homeowner or a business owner, do they get a letter of certification from your board stating so? What is the follow-up after the, inspection, I guess, for lack of better words?
Okay, so if you look in section 4, letter E, it actually discusses that. So basically, after a determination that the structure is historically and or architecturally significant, the inspector and the applicant shall be so notified in writing, and a permit shall not be issued, and then a hearing will be held within 20 days of that.
Thank you.
Mr. Leith?
Yeah, I had two things. Thank you, through you. The provision that I was referring to earlier that had a $300 penalty, I just wanted to be clear that it isn't $300. It's $300 per day.
Yes, it is.
And so if you had the misfortune of taking a house down before there was a determination and there's a year moratorium, then actually the penalty is $109,500, which I think is kind of maybe a little bit hidden in here. So it's not like it's just $300. My own personal feeling in hearing the discussion that we're having is that, and I'm fully in favor of historic preservation, as I said before. I think that a lot of very good issues have been raised, but I feel as though this piece of writing isn't ready for
Prime time.
prime
yet.
time. That's just my feeling.
I could throw you one. Tom?
Is the $300 already, what's, the $300 is already existing or you're adding it in? We already have this bylaw. What's the fine right now?
So the fine right now is the fine for violating any bylaw, which I believe is $300. I don't know what the fine is at
Okay.
present, but it's in the bylaws somewhere, and I believe it's $300.
300 per day.
300 per day, yes.
Yep.
So, yeah, so it's already
It's already in there.
existing.
Oh,
So,
yes.
I mean, I have a couple of issues. I think the one I raised earlier, which people went back to about designating someone, that wouldn't prevent me from supporting the article. It basically is changing it from 6 to 12 months, and we already have it in place, this article, this thing. So do we want to go from 6 to 12 months? Because most of the other stuff is already pre-existing, unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, I would agree with that. A lot of the changes are just minor.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
corrections of building inspector to commissioner,
Yeah.
and the other stuff is more administrative stuff. but it's an existing bylaw that's 6 months, and do we want to change it to 12?
Yes.
You good? Because Dick's got a question.
Yeah, one last thing, Mr. Chairman. I think Mark summed it up pretty well as to what the intent is with the one person. The only thing I'd say is it avoids open meeting law violations by having one person just doing it. But I don't think it's a great thing to have happening, but I'm not sure it's that significant that everything will start at the public hearing, is my understanding. And I would be, like I said, in favor of the 12 months.
Okay. You Joneson, yes, sir.
So I do have concerns, having heard the discussion, in terms of the priority, so feel free to respond to this after I make my comments. I worry the 6 extra months is going to do little to sway a homeowner. I get your point about needing some engineer or some extra permit, but the crux of the issue is convincing the homeowner. If they're willing to consider this plan that you've set them on course within the 6 months, I'd reasonably suppose they'd carry that out. And I feel like, again, in the context of housing, I've said this many times before, increasingly exclusionary zoning land use regulations, whether it's ill-advised zoning or ill-advised historical preservation, even though it's historical preservation, as John said, is something I think we're all behind, is arguably responsible for a lot of our skyrocketing housing prices. So that's my first concern, is the 6 months. I just feel like it would do too little. I do worry, as Tom has pointed out, invest too much power in one person to make this decision. I don't quite get the $300 fine per day, because it seems to me it's all black and bold underlined under Section 9. So I don't see where that existed before, the $300 per day, unless I'm mistaken.
So, up until now, that has been in the town's general laws. So, the $300 a day is already on the books.
Gotcha.
What we're attempting to do is we're attempting to clarify it in our bylaw.
Got it. So yeah, so just 2 of those 3 concerns of mine stand. Thank you.
Well, Andrew, just to respond real quick, I mean, much to what Mark said, if the one individual is to help expedite the process, because things do move at a snail's pace, hence why making 6 to 12 to me also makes more sense.
But isn't there a
because you
20-day?
can't-
There's a 20-day limit. They have to make a decision within 20 days.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, they have to own public.
That's right.
Well,
So it's not like that that by not having this meeting that they are expediting it that much.
Fair enough.
No, if it's determined to be significant, they have to hold a hearing in 20 days.
Oh, okay, I see.
So
So
that-
when they designate it,
Yeah.
got it.
Right, so when they go to Joe's
Gotcha,
house
gotcha.
or my house and go, there's nothing significant about this
I
at
see.
all.
So there's no timeline for that currently. I know there's the 15 days
Well-
the building commissioner has to.
yeah, so, okay. The process is, we receive an application. We have 15 days, so if you follow along in section 4, which is the procedure section, letter D, within 15 days, we have to respond to that application. We have to make a determination. Now, that's 15 weekdays, which is 3 weeks. And then upon our determination, we then have 20 weekdays to have a hearing. I hope that clarifies the confusion.
So 3 weeks from when you get the application to make a determination, and then 4 weeks to have a hearing if you deem it historically significant.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So,
Through you. So Sam, the question I have about changing the 6 to 12 months is is there a specific difficulty you've run into where the 6 months was insufficient?
No, but we feel that we feel that historically significant houses are going to continue to be a concern, and we feel that that 12 months is needed to provide more of a protection for those houses. Specifically the house at Walpole Woodworkers, for example. That is a historic house. It's not really, as I said, it does not have an impact on their overall plan. That should be preserved. if you had a 12-month delay on that, it's more likely that it would be.
It would be what?
That it would remain. Whereas, in 6 months, it would probably not. It would probably be torn down after 6 months. So it's but that's just one example. I mean, so we feel that as we move forward, extending that time would be in the town's interest because it ensures that these historic houses can remain and be protected, basically.
But again, there hasn't been a situation where a home that's been considered historically significant has been demolished.
Well, it's happened, but it's usually after the 6 months ends or after we've found that the applicant has made the efforts to find some other options besides tearing it down, basically.
So how will the 12 months change things? How will it improve things?
It will ensure that we have more teeth in our law, basically, to ensure.
How so?
Because the applicant will not be able to. The applicant will have a longer time to run out the clock, and we will have more power to ensure that they are actually exploring alternatives. I mean, it's hard for me to explain because we've done it. It's hard for me to explain all the situations we've had. But the way that I can explain it is that when an applicant has a plan to tear down a historic structure, if they know that they only need that all they need to do is just wait 6 months, then it's unlikely, and the chances that they are willing to explore alternatives is lower. And we have seen examples of where the applicant has said, "Well, it's only 6 months. I'll just wait," or I'll make some efforts here and there, and I'll just I'll see if I can if maybe I can present this to the commission. Whereas 12 months, we actually have some authority to say, look, you have 12 months. You need to actually make it a serious effort to explore other options. So, I mean, I'm not sure if I'm explaining it correctly, but I hope that.
So, you're saying that 12 months allows you to hold the applicant's feet to the fire for that much longer to do something.
I would say yes. It allows us to hold their feet to the fire in terms of the fact that they will have 12 months as opposed to 6 months because because they have the prospect of having to wait 12 months instead of just 6 months.
All right. Can you give us a specific example of how this change would have impacted anything that's come before your group? I mean,
I would use the example of, as I said, the house at Walpole Woodworkers.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if we had a 12-month delay on that, probably the chances of it remaining intact are higher. Now, that said, I want to be clear. This bylaw was not a response to any particular example. These are changes that we've wanted to make for several years, and we've been working on them. But a recent example, it would be that one.
So you think if it was 12 months, then you would have...
If it was 12 months, I think the applicant would be more willing to come to the table with us and explore alternatives, which they have not yet been interested in doing.
Mm-hmm. And what's the status of that property right now?
Well, the applicant is moving through the planning board, I believe, and so basically their intent is just to run out the clock on our process, and because their process with the planning board is going to last a lot longer than 6 months.
And then demolish it.
Yes.
Okay.
Mark? Yeah. Through you. I see where the 12 months would kind of incentivize somebody to come to the table and make an effort. If they've got a project that they deem as time sensitive, they don't want to be hung up for a year on trying to move forward on developing their property. So they would, in fact, seek out other options, a new location to move the existing structure if possible, or to, once again, subdivide the property so they can move that off and maybe acquire property on the other side of their property to do what they want to do on a different footprint. So
Correct, yep.
the year would incentivize somebody to take action sooner so they can proceed with their project.
Yes. You're very able to explain what I cannot. So.
That's why I have him. Rated this.
Just to clarify, so part of the, the teeth that this new law would have is it essentially is going to double the fine as well?
No, the fine as far as I know is 300 right now, but it's just in a separate section of the bylaw.
But is it 300 times 6 months, or is it 300
Per
'cause we're
day.
It's
per
300
day? Yeah.
They're in violation.
Per day.
But
Yeah.
but doesn't that increase? Doesn't that double the fine if you violate it?
Technically,
Well, if you wait a
Yes.
year.
You
Wait the full year, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, no, but also, if you demolish it.
Right, you got to
If
demolish
you
it.
demolish it, you demolish
but
it.
you have to rebuild it though.
Yeah,
Rebuild it to what it was before.
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
If hopefully you haven't gone and demolished it, you should.
So I want to be clear that the enforcement section, we don't expect to ever have to deal with that. I mean, everyone's supposed to go through the process. I mean, we've only had one incident where there was somebody who did not follow our bylaw, and they had to pay the fine, and they had to go through the process. But this is a very unlikely scenario that someone's going to not obey the process. So.
Okay, you good?
Well,
So,
I had, no, Dick
Oh.
was gonna go after Pat, and then
Oh,
Tommy
that's
was chiming,
fine,
but,
okay,
okay.
that's fine.
I think the way I look at it,
Track you guys.
and it's somewhat thought-provoking, is that I live across the street from a significantly older home. It's an old farmhouse that evidently was part of the one-room school up there before Fisher got built the first time, and now you've got Fisher New over on Gould Street. With the 12 months, I feel, I worry every day that the lady who lived there, she's 85, or that her family will sell that property if she dies, and I won't have any protection if it goes into a group home, or it goes to a daycare, or it goes to anything that they can push in there in the zoning. Zoning protects us quite a bit, but not completely. And I think if you look at it that way, it could be, say Susan's house was next to a significantly important building and it got sold, you'll be scrambling for 6 months to try to do something. I think the 12 months is fairer for the neighborhoods. So I think you can look at it that way too.
Sure. All right, back to Tom.
I'll move favorable action on Article 38.
I second it.
Second? Okay,
Discussion?
but John still had a question, so I'm gonna.
Thank you. I'm going to get back to that section about for at least 6 or 12 months, the owner has made continuing bona fide and reasonable efforts. So you have indicated that changing it to 12 months might make a difference with respect to the Walpole Woodworkers site. And I don't really necessarily understand why it would make any difference, because they have to show, it says 6 versus 12 months, but they have to show for 6 months that they've made continuing bona fide and reasonable efforts. Okay, so if they haven't done that, then the 6 months doesn't run. So what,
They haven't done
they can't just run it out by letting 6 months pass.
Oh, no, they, after that time ends, they can do, they can tear it down.
That's not what it says.
Well, okay, so you're reading the section called exceptions, which is where these would be in effect when we would vote to end the delay prior to the 12 months. So if the applicant has shown us that for those 12 months already, for at least a year already, they've been working to find other options and they haven't found any options, then they could ask us to say, look, you wanted to impose a 12-month delay, but we'd like it to only be 3 months because we only need 3 more months to do, to do whatever, and then after 3 months, one of these exceptions would be applied.
So you're saying that despite what the exceptions say, that they actually don't have to do anything for 6 months?
Yeah, essentially.
Okay. I don't know how to respond to that.
I agree, it's weird.
I mean, what's the point?
Right.
Well, right, but the point is that 12 months is gonna make them think, okay, we need to figure something else out besides tearing it down, because otherwise they have to wait for 12 months before they can do anything.
But they don't have to do anything for those 12 months.
Right, they honestly don't, to be honest. But we're encouraging them to seek a waiver with one of those exceptions. So.
It's not what it says to me either. But.
Well, this should be an interesting vote.
And actually, I want to be clear. That section's already in the bylaw. I hope you know that. So, I mean, I'm not saying it was well written at the time.
No,
but
I see it's in the bylaw. It's just it says what I previously said that it said, which is that they have to show a continuing bona fide and reasonable effort to locate a purchaser. Therefore, presumably, the 6-month period wouldn't run until they have done that.
well, that's not. Do you mind explaining that again? So what did you just say?
English,
Under
exceptions.
Under section 5B, it says that they have to show for at least 6 months that they have made continuing, I'm just reading what it says, they have made continuing bona fide and reasonable efforts to locate a purchaser to preserve the property.
Yeah.
And my point was simply, and the point may be wrong, I'm not an expert on this bylaw, you are, that if they haven't shown continuing bona fide and reasonable efforts for 6 months, then the 6 months doesn't run.
Begin to run, that's right.
No, so the section. So if you start at the beginning of section 5, which says notwithstanding anything contained in
Right.
section G, which is the let's see, where is that? Which is right before it. The inspector may issue a permit for a preferably preserved structure at any time after our commission is satisfied with either of the following. So basically, this would only be triggered when the applicant is asking us to end the 12-month delay prior to it ending. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm explaining it correctly, but it makes sense in my mind. I don't know how to explain it to you.
It is
Well, if he's done.
Yeah, I'm done if you can add to that. Yeah, I'm confused.
It's under exception. So once you've done due diligence and you know.
Well, presumably if there's a 6-month delay,
Right.
there should be some good faith requirement that that 6-month delay is accomplishing a purpose, and presumably the purpose is to try to sell the property. Otherwise, this thing has no teeth.
Yeah.
Well, it's currently at 6. And they want to go to 12.
Right,
No,
but
I
for
hear
what-
that, but
For what purpose?
according to Sam, I'm sorry, it's just according to Sam, they can just do nothing. So it seems to me, again, that if the bylaw is going to have any effectiveness, they should be required to do something during that 6-month time.
Well,
That's the flaw.
Well, I think it has to deal with also the market. I mean, if you're looking for, like, take your neighbor, if you're looking for a quick sale, okay, so God forbid your neighbor passes away and the kid's like, ooh, we got this house, and they just want to get rid of it. They don't have a problem waiting 6 months, but
No, but they can
tack
do
on
that.
another year.
Well, but they can sell it. This has to do with demolition. It doesn't have to do with sale.
Yeah, but somebody who's gonna buy that? If you go into this negotiation, it's just like, yeah, I got a great deal for you, right? Yeah, it's kind of historical, whatever, but, you know, just wait out the 6 months, you can bulldoze that thing, do whatever you want. As a builder, I don't know, I might hedge my bets, but if I gotta wait a year for it, not knowing what next year is gonna be like, cost of labor, cost of lumber, I might be like, you know what? You can keep your house. Maybe you should do the right thing, you know? Yes, Dick?
We have a motion on the floor, but I'd just like to say, we're a finance committee, and we spend a hell of a lot of time on zoning. I wish we'd get back to what we're here for. I think it's important, but I wonder all this debate and nitpicking.
Yes, Sue?
Through you. Well, just for the record, we are a finance committee, but we're also a policy committee because our motion is the main motion at town meeting. And there are many things, street names is a good example, that we're the main motion and it's
I
not a
don't need to
matter
be
of
lectured, Susan. I
dollars.
know exactly what it is.
The point is here, and I think why we're struggling with this is I don't think this is ready for prime time. I think there are a number of serious issues and questions that have been raised in this discussion tonight that should be addressed. There is a motion on the floor, but I think I agree with John, you know, to change 6 to 12, to me, the key here in this exception is whether the owner has made continuing bona fide and reasonable efforts. And if he or she has not, then the commission would not be satisfied and therefore would not permit demolition. So there are inconsistencies within the provisions and overall, and I'm not comfortable that this is really ready to go.
So I can respond to that. So it sounds like what you're saying is that we need even more authority to block demolitions. Is that what you're advocating for? Like you're saying we have to tell the applicant that during that 12 months they've got to actually, you know, work hard to find
That's what the language says.
Well, right. Well, only if they want an exception.
Right. So if they want, it says may issue a demolition permit, and then it goes on to say if the commission is satisfied with either A or B. And B requires bona fide actions. So to say that the owner can just sit on his hands or her hands and do nothing doesn't comport with the language.
But that's an exception. Like so they would have to ask for an exception from our commission to say we don't want those 12 months because this is what we're doing. So that's why it's the exception section. We do not have the authority under state law to say you can't tear down a house at all. That would be that's a completely separate section of the law that we do not have in Walpole, which is a totally different story.
It's a constitutional question.
Right.
Yeah. So the only thing we are allowed to do under state law is to impose a delay of some sort of a certain number of months. And so essentially this is an exception section. Which basically says that if the applicant wants to come to us and say we've been doing these reasonable efforts, etc., they can ask for an exception. We do not have to grant that to them, based on our discretion. And that language has we've used that language in the past as I've said for certain other applications. We've had applicants who have said this is what I've been doing. I would like you to vote to use this exception on my structure. So it's an exception. Everywhere else in the law, they are not required to do anything during that 12 months. Now, I'm happy to entertain, our commission would welcome discussion on putting language in requiring the applicant to do certain things during that 12 months, but I don't believe that I do not know of any other towns that have any language like that.
I guess I'm just wondering why a change from 6 to 12 months would make any difference. That's what I'm struggling with.
Okay.
I don't understand how that would help anything. That's the trouble I have with it.
Okay, I'll tell you, as a real estate guy, that one's real simple.
Yeah,
That's 12 months, that's 6 months additional carrying costs.
yeah.
That's as basic as it gets. But then on the other issues, we're debating a bylaw. The sections we're caught up in were approved by a finance committee at a town meeting 30-something years ago. We can't time travel. So,
So there's no change on the floor?
no, there is,
Oh,
the 6 to
okay.
12 months, but we're all caught up in the exceptions,
Yeah.
which are an exception. They don't have to grant them, they can grant them. And maybe we should say to them, go back and tighten that up at some point, but it seems like it's been 40 years of being loose. I'm not sure that's a reason I'd say, no, we can't make some section better, because 40 years ago, someone didn't type it well, didn't write it well. It's basically, do you want to let 6 months go to 12 months?
Right, that's the question.
Yeah, and that seems simple to me. It's gonna impact, if someone's gonna buy X building for certain dollars and know they're gonna knock it down in 6 months, the one in Walpole Road is real simple. If they know they get a 7-month permitting and they got 6 months here, they're not worried about it. But if it's gonna take 7 months to permit it and 12 months for this, then they added 5 months. I mean, do they wanna pay an extra 5 months?
All right, real quick, otherwise I'm gonna take a vote.
I'm done.
You good? Quick, or I'm gonna take a vote?
Just quickly, Susan, I really understand what you're saying, but I agree with the extension. I don't like you lecturing me, but Chairman Bruce last year told me he'd just as soon not involve himself with zoning. And that comes from somebody that you all love and know.
Well, with
And I'm just,
all due respect, I don't agree. I think that this is not a committee that deals with adding numbers and coming up with a balanced budget. That is our job, yes, but also it's policy. A lot of the discussion we have, witnessed the discussion a couple of meetings ago about water, is about policy. What is the best policy for the town of Walpole? It's not just a matter of
okay, I don't want to be
So I'm not lecturing you, I'm just
You are.
expressing an opinion.
All right, okay,
Mr. Chairman,
we're done.
can I
Let's
just
take-
respond? Susan likes to lecture. I don't want to do that. I just think that I understand that we are a finance committee and we are a recommending board for a lot of these issues. I think we've beat this one to death tonight, and I would like to see us vote on it.
Well, that's where we're going.
That being noted, let's take a vote, please. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay.
Want to raise hands?
Yeah,
Yes.
let's go back. So, you want to do nose first?
Yes.
Okay.
Nose?
Nose first.
Yes, on the nose. Oh my God, you're killing me here. Ally, 4,
And
5.
6.
And Pat.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay.
who's the sixth
6.
one? Well, I got
Right.
Pat. Andrew.
Susan.
Susan.
No.
Susan.
So, defeated.
Yep. Goes down.
We got it?
Yep, goes down.
Okay. All right.
Are we
That's
in
that. You
6-5.
really want to talk about
Five,
$1,000 tonight?
6 no?
Well,
5 yes?
We got the letter.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
No.
I mean,
To no.
well, I understand there were questions about it, and so I wanted to make myself available, but I'm happy to, I don't need to stay. Happy to.
No offense there, Sam. Does anybody have any questions to Sam about this? And you all read his letter about that stuff there. We are going to be doing final budget reviews soon, so,
All right.
all right, because
Thank you.
I got 2 other biggies coming up, bud, so I appreciate it, okay? Thanks, Sam. All right. Wow,
5, 6 went down.
killing me. Killing me. All right, 39. Do we have Mrs. Shockett?
Yes, she is.
Yes. How are you? Thanks for.
You guys go a little easier on me. By the way, I'm keeping a seat here. If anybody in the hall or on the side wants my seat, you're welcome to it. Yeah.
Saw you brought a bunch of people. Unfortunately, it's not a public hearing, so.
We brought a bunch
But-
of people. We did. That's okay. Thank you. And thanks, Sam. I think you did a really good job.
Excuse me one second.
so-
On this, Mr. Chairman, I'm asked for your opinion whether or not I should sit on this. I know the applicant, and I had worked with her at Walpole Woodworkers.
Okay.
Does that affect, or should I not sit?
He shouldn't.
No, it should be.
Well, I don't think.
What are you saying?
Well, look, due diligence, I understand that there's other meetings. I know that the selectmen haven't met and talked about this. There's, there's still some questions about legal, so I don't think we're gonna,
Okay, I
Vote
just
on
want to
it.
throw it out there that I know her.
I appreciate that, that's
To
great.
clarify, we never dated or anything.
Okay. You don't live in the house across the street?
She's in that house on the left of the Woodworkers.
All right, so,
Mr. Chairman, what was the vote on the previous, on our Article 38?
5-6.
5-6, so it did not pass.
Correct. Sorry, bud.
So my article is eminent domain. I think most of you are probably familiar. I'm not sure if everybody knows what house we're talking about, so I brought some pictures here in case you want to know specifically
Yeah, thank you.
what home we're trying to preserve.
We'll share it. Yeah.
Okay.
Smith Healy, huh?
I also brought some engineering plans that were submitted the other day by David Allen, who would like to
I know where it is, because Joe Moraski called
commercial
me about it.
daycare.
They're gonna put a daycare there.
So I hate to ask you to share, but I don't think I have
That's fine.
quite enough copies for everybody.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
That's great, thanks Susan. Okay, and I'll try to go somewhat quickly because I know everybody's getting restless. So our proposal is that the town purchase the land at 1350 North Street by eminent domain, place historic restrictions on the home once it's owned by the town, and then resell it to a cash buyer. The Walpole Preservation Alliance, who many of these fine people are members, we're over 150 strong, and those are just the people that we have registered. So there is a lot of support in town for preserving the historic home at 1350 North Street. We are a 501c4 organization at the moment. That means that we can fundraise. We have a tax ID, and we are going ahead with our fundraising efforts, and we want to offset any expense to the town. So the initial investment by David Allen, the current landowner of 1350 North Street, was around $405,000. We anticipate that there'd be a little bit of additional expense if the town were to purchase the property. Our fundraising efforts are going to help offset that expense. And we do have several interested cash buyers already. A lot was just discussed about people making a solid effort to preserve or find another buyer when there's a delay placed on a home. I'm sure you're aware, 1350 North Street is in a delay mode right now, which expires in May. Mr. Allen has made some very feeble attempts to find other places to put the home outside of Walpole and outside of North Street. Not surprisingly, those were rejected by Sturbridge Village and a couple of other, the Adams Farm. He has not, however, tried to find another buyer, even though he's well aware that we do have, we've had 4 different buyers come forward, knowing that it has to be a cash transaction because of a septic issue. So, what value is in the town for a house? It's a historic home. It's 273 years old. It was owned by one single family for 147 of those years. It was continuously lived in up until a year ago when David Allen purchased the home. It has had renovations done to it. There's a new kitchen, new heating system, new bathroom. Does need a little bit of fixing up and a little TLC on the outside, but like I said, we've got cash buyers who are willing to put some energy into it and to keeping that structure up. It is worthy of the National Historic Register, and the former owner is a preservationist who never took the final step to get that done. However, he did, when he sold it to a like-minded buyer who wanted to put some work into it. Sought out a realtor who was a specialist on historic homes and sold it with the understanding that it was going to be preserved. That is not the case. The current owner would like to demolish the house and build a commercial daycare on the property through the Dover Amendment. The Dover Amendment makes everybody very nervous. It's difficult law on the Massachusetts books to argue against. What it basically says is that churches, schools, and libraries can go outside of regular town zoning laws. And it's a tricky amendment to work around. We have thought long and hard about other alternatives. We have let the current owner know that people are interested in purchasing it. He won't meet with us. The town administrator tried to reach out to him, would not have a meeting with us. We have not been able to come up with any alternative to keep that house standing and to preserve the character of North Street, which is why many of us came to Walpole in the first place. Eminent domain is it's kind of our last shot. And we are very much committed to, like I said, helping to offset any expense to the town. I want to point out that, some people have said business is going to bring in money. Schools do not. They would not be paying a property tax, is my understanding, to school. Other schools in town are not paying property tax. So the town's not going to make any money on this. And once it's torn down, you're stuck with a building that's in non-conforming zoning status. What do we do with that? This is a large commercial structure with a huge septic. You can see from the plan, nobody can purchase that and redevelop it, getting it back into a residential home once this thing goes in. So the town's going to have to figure out what to do if it fails. I want to point out that the woman who would be potentially running the daycare, Maureen Mazzola, does not have any prior business ownership experience. This is her first try out of the gate. So,
Scary.
it scares me too. I'm not sure who said that, but yes, it is scary. Somebody who has no experience wants to come in. They're trying to slide in under the radar with the Dover Amendment, take down a historic home, and put up a business that may or may not succeed. About half a mile from the Next Generation Daycare on Shaker Lane in Walpole, which is, at the last time I spoke with the director there, it was the largest daycare in the state of Massachusetts. They've got 330 children in that, and they're not at capacity. They're at 90%. You've also got a daycare, if you turn right onto 109 in Westwood, also not at full capacity. Further down 109, a massive daycare, it's a public daycare for the town of Dedham is being built. On South Street, we've got a very large daycare being built.
Yeah.
So, realistically, a new business owner with no experience in daycare is up against quite a bit of competition in the area. There's a very good chance that the town would be left with the building in non-conforming zoning status. I don't know who's been on North Street at 7 a.m., but you might notice there is a considerable amount of traffic. Generally, traffic backs up from the intersection of 109 all the way to around Sexton Farm, depending on the day of the week and the time. Now, this particular property is right at the top of the hill. It's on a busy stretch. People are going, I can tell you from standing at the bus stop, somewhere upwards of 50 miles an hour flying down there. And now we're talking about adding, potentially, if it's 100 kids, figure at least 75 more vehicles to that road, making turns in and out of that property. It's going to be a nightmare. Ridiculous. I've already talked to both police and fire chiefs who are very concerned about the traffic situation. It's increasing traffic on a busy road. That I can also testify there are sirens just about every day at that intersection. There's an accident all the time. So now we're going to be using our police and fire resources to respond to more accidents on a road that's already got too much traffic to deal with. The police and fire also reminded me that we've got a large-scale development going in on Moose Hill. We've got apartments going in the center of town. Last I spoke, I don't think anybody gave you any more officers, did they? You don't have any more firefighters, and I'm pretty sure Chief Carmichael wasn't approved of more. So we're asking to put a lot of pressure on our existing services, and this is for a commercial, for-profit business. Well, is Tracy Firth here? Hey, Trace. So Tracy owns property on North Street, and she owns a farm. About a year ago, Tracy applied for a permit because she wanted to have a small farm stand on her existing farm. Animals, the works. She's got it. She was denied. She was denied the permit because commercial business does not belong on North Street. The town did not want to sign up. They didn't want people turning in and out of Tracy's driveway. But now we're looking at 100 kids plus teachers, huge septic system. You weren't going to put in a new septic. No, this is 100 times what has already been turned down on North Street. Again, no police and fire extra, and North Street is the only way for the police and fire to access the northwest corner of town where there is a 330-child daycare. There's also a small home daycare on Crosswoods Path. One of those kids goes into anaphylactic shock at morning drop-off. The consequences might be pretty dire. Going back to property taxes, we're not going to get taxes from the school. However, the town is going to lose because we are all going to have to file abatements because our property values will be dropping. My property is directly next door to 1350. I've got a very small house. My house becomes economically obsolete. I mean, I would have a very difficult time selling my small home with a 100-child daycare center right next door. Enough about my problems. Like I said, we've got some cash buyers waiting in the wings. The current owner has not made any attempt to preserve, rehabilitate, or restore the home. And I'm hoping that you guys will vote along with us and support our proposal to purchase the property by eminent domain.
Wow. And the lights light up on the phone system. I got Tom, John, Ally, Sue. So, Thomas.
I'm just wondering, we haven't seen anything from town council.
No, I talked to JJ about that, and we have not gotten that information just yet.
Because that's going to be important because, to be perfectly honest, I think this is a crazy idea. The threshold for eminent domain is very high.
Yeah.
And it's not because the town doesn't like it or people don't like it. So I'd be very interested to see what town council has to say about eminent domain being used for this.
We have hired an attorney who has fought on both sides of the Dover Amendment, and he's a prominent attorney from the Sugarman and Rogers. Did I get that right? Sorry. Yeah, Sugarman Rogers law firm in Boston. He feels that it's a clear abuse of the Dover Amendment, and that
in which case we should definitely go after them for that. But because they're abusing a law doesn't mean we get to take an exceedingly broad view of another law.
Well, we're hoping I would very much hope that we wouldn't have to resort to eminent domain. But right now, especially with the vote that was taken right before this, that keeps the 6 month in place. In May, if the landowner isn't willing to talk to us still, what choice do we have?
Well, we may have no choice. I mean, unfortunately, people often come before town boards, and I hate to be overly negative and expect we're going to be able to solve the problem, but quite often your government has created the problems with Dover Amendment and various things.
I agree.
Conflicting laws, but
So at what point
I
do you
got
draw
to
the line?
imagine if we take someone's property, if the town uses its power to take someone's property to effectively give it to someone else, it's been used in places, there's famous Supreme Court decisions on it, but it'll get messy, and it won't be quick in terms of our involvement as a town with, I imagine, their attorneys going for some time to come, because it's supposed to be very difficult for the government to come and take your stuff.
Well, there was a case in New London that went to the Supreme Court that where property was taken from a woman because they wanted to build a shopping mall. Her house is in the way of the shopping mall.
And you know what? It's still empty. And that lawsuit, that going to the Supreme Court has divided lawyers, because that was probably, I mean, it was a 5-6 vote, 5-4 vote, because it was pretty slimy what was done.
I agree, but I think in this case, where you've got a 273-year-old house, part of Walpole's history, it's been standing there.
I think we should have as much historical restriction as we can, especially for something as old as this, as interesting as this. But I'm conflicted because the threshold for the government to take your stuff is very, very high.
I understand. I definitely understand it, and I agree in that it should only be used in severe circumstances. But I think when we don't have another way, a surefire way to get around the Dover Amendment.
But unfortunately, the law doesn't say, well, he doesn't want to sell it to us, so we can take it. You have a right to not sell your stuff. And he may be, I don't even want to say he, a person may be entirely wrong in many ways, and we may not like what they're doing, but there's still, strangely enough, not strangely, they have rights as landowners. I would hope we can find other stuff to discourage this. I was hoping another 6 months of waiting, or
I was hoping the same.
But that may not come to pass. But I guess at this point, I'm going to be very interested to see what our council says, because they would be the one defending us if we do this.
Okay, thanks, Tom. John, Ally, Sue.
Through you, Paul. First a comment, then the question that I was going to ask. I think that if the vote that we had preceding this conversation, if it had gone the other way, it wouldn't have made any difference.
It wouldn't have made any difference for
this being 6 versus 12 months, because when this was filed, the law was 6 months.
Yeah.
So you can't retroactively apply a 12-month
I'm not
period.
sure about that. I've looked into that a little bit. I think it might have actually applied, but
I am sure about it.
okay.
Mike, and I don't mean that imperiously, but this is actually an area that I practice in.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully it would help the next person that.
Well, I just want to be on the record for saying that for those of you who think if only that had passed, that would have given us more hope, that isn't correct.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I can actually respond to that, because we did get an opinion from town council on that.
You've got 30 seconds.
Why don't we get the
Mr. Lee,
opinion
I
from
can
town
share with
council?
you the opinion from town council. Actually, if Article 38 had passed, it actually would apply to this particular structure.
I'd like to see that in writing. I don't want to take
Okay,
verbals.
well,
Right.
we can talk
Yeah.
about that later, but that's
Yeah.
unfortunately it's in the past right now, so.
Okay,
question,
so
John?
so the question that I did have for you was, if what I'd ask you to do, if you could, is look at where you're trying to go, and walk me down to that point. And specifically, what I'm asking is, you and your group are looking to have the property taken by eminent domain, which sounds to me as though it's essentially like a loan from the town.
That's correct.
Uh,
Yep.
And what I'm trying to figure out is, to the extent that you're able to quantify this, what are the costs? In other words, you're looking at hopefully the town owning the property, selling it, getting its money back. One can anticipate that there might be a considerable amount of litigation, possibly, although maybe you're thinking or hoping, and when I say you, I mean your group, that the taking would just stop everything and maybe it wouldn't go that far. But what I'm interested in hearing is financially how you see this working out at the end of the whole process.
Well, since we haven't been able to sit down with the current owner and talk about what would be an acceptable price for somebody to pay to just make this go away before going through all this, the town has to come up with a fair price for the current landowner. He bought it for somewhere around $405,000. I would think he would want at least a bit more compensation to make it worth his while. So say maybe $415. I don't know what engineering surveys cost, but I know he's had engineering done on it. He's had an architect do prints. He hasn't made any other enhancements to the property itself, so I wouldn't think that expense-wise on the buying end you'd be into too much. The cost, like you said, if he ends up wanting to proceed with suing the town after the purchase, that might rack up some more fees. We will fundraise, and hopefully we can offset much of that. Can I anticipate? I don't know how far he would be willing to go as far as litigation goes. So I think it's hard for me to come up with where that might end. But like I said, we've established ourselves as a fundraising organization at this point, and we're definitely on board with supporting the town.
Have there been any commitments of funding to your organization to bankroll the possible?
I have had some commitments that are sizable, yes.
Can you be more specific?
I can't be too much more specific, but it was, we had an anticipated at least $10,000 in our battle, and neighbors have stepped forward to cover at least that expense. Mm-hmm. So I feel quite confident that I can raise enough money to make this worth the town's while.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Ellie?
Thank you. I do not think this is the right place for a commercial size daycare. I work in early childhood, so a large capacity child care facility of 100 with someone without experience. I would anticipate someone who opened a school of this size would have a number of years of experience in infant, toddler, preschool, school age, and have already been a director of a site for a number of years. There are some of your arguments I had a hard time with because I don't think they're strong enough. You mentioned a lot of the commercial daycares around. They may be at 90% capacity. When you call them, there's a very high turnover and there's a very high need for early childhood in this area right now. Parents are on wait lists and struggling to find.
Well, they've told me. I spoke to, I think, just about everybody in the 10-mile radius probably, and for infants. But outside of infants, just about everybody's got some room. And actually, I want to clarify, too, for the woman who would be running the center, the daughter of the landowner, she does have experience as the director of a center, not as an owner. And the center that she had been director of is no longer in existence. So she had been with Bright Horizons and a center that was shut down.
And there is very high turnover in this area. There's high turnover for teachers and for things of that nature. I mean, you mentioned the South Street. Where South Street is going with the commercial daycare, I think that's an appropriate space.
I agree. It looks great.
I happen to know the owner too. I think where it's going is appropriate. I don't think North Street is an appropriate place for commercial daycare. You mentioned concerns about the septic and the size as an argument against. Can you elaborate that on that a little bit?
Yes, because the septic is going to have to be massive. The soil there does not perk. It's got a very high water table. I'm throwing this term around. I'm not a construction person, but it has to do with how water.
I'm kind of somewhat, know some things about septic and sizes of that nature.
Yeah. So
but
in this
saying that as an argument against, I'm not.
The argument isn't against putting a septic in. The argument is that if she fails, you have this massive septic system that takes up a considerable portion of the property. You have a huge retaining wall. Somebody's not going to be able to go in there and clear out the parking lot, get rid of the septic, and put a house there without a huge amount of expense. So we're going to be stuck with the building that is outside of zoning.
If this building fails of using this Doberman, if this fails, it's a problem.
Right. That was my point with pointing out the large.
And I don't agree that it should go there. The process of going through it and what the town would have to go through and kind of in good faith, hope that lawyers could get through. But you start talking about that and the cost of that. There's a lot of questions there.
Okay, thank you. I got to go Sue, then Ed. Back to you, Dick. So,
So, through you, my question is, the Dover Amendment, doesn't that apply to nonprofit?
That was my understanding.
That's it's funny. No, we looked into that too, and that we were hoping that nonprofit would be the clincher there, but no. As long as it's a school, it can slide in under the Dover Amendment.
Do you have a copy of the language?
I don't have it with me right now. It's easy enough to find online. It does appear, because I read it that way too, but we checked that with the lawyer, and it does not have to be nonprofit.
So the Dover Amendment, it's your understanding, applies to any kind of educational.
Or religious.
If it's a school, yeah.
Okay, and daycare is considered a school. I would just comment that I think it's not a strong argument to argue that the owner does not have experience. I mean, it's not the town's role to judge any business owner on whether he or she may make a go of it. In other words, let me finish.
Yeah.
That, when someone owns a property and they want to open a business, we wish them well. And I think it's not a strong argument to say, well, we think this particular owner doesn't have enough experience or what have you. I mean, I just think that that's a loser in terms of convincing reasonable people on why this should or shouldn't happen as a matter of eminent domain. Like others have said, I think this is probably not the right place for commercial business. But having said that, I think has also been said, the standard for taking by eminent domain is quite high. And I think we need to wait for town council to get an opinion on that. I would ask this question: what is the town's, this is really the question, what is the town's interest in taking this property by eminent domain? Not what are the neighbors' interests, not what do we think about the owner, what is the town's interest?
If you go back to the master plan, that was it 4 years ago? Walpole did their master plan and they asked for input. I believe it was
15 years ago?
Sorry?
15?
mm-hmm.
2015?
Well, whenever.
15 years ago.
Yeah, it's quite a while back.
I thought it was more closely.
So it doesn't matter. What's
anyway,
the town's
it doesn't matter.
interest?
The point is, it was pointed out by a huge portion of Walpole that North Street is like the jewel for Walpole. That's what sets Walpole apart. When people drive up North Street going into Walpole, you got the historic homes, you got the hay fields, you got the sun setting in the west. You feel like you're driving into an idyllic New England town. It's the one part of the town where you drive in and you're like, wow, I'm in New England. This is beautiful. I want to live here. That's why I bought my house there. I didn't want to buy a house on a busy road, but I fell in love with the street. I drove in. I was like, wow, this place is gorgeous.
So your view is that is sufficient to cause the town to take this property by eminent domain?
Well, it's not. it's keeping the property values of Walpole up too. If, I mean, you come in, we've got, Charlie, with 12 houses, historic homes within 1 mile. So you have a huge volume of historic homes, and 1350 is one of the oldest in the state of Massachusetts, not just in the town of Walpole. This is something that you can't even put a dollar value on the history of the country. When the Walpole militia was marching up to Lexington,
I just wanted to understand why you thought it.
I think it
what the
doesn't always
town's
come down
interest
to the finance. Sometimes it's the history. Once the history is gone, the history is gone. And to address the inexperience of Maureen Mazzola, if this was going into a business location that had already been zoned for business, and it was a strip mall and she was putting her daycare in, I wouldn't question it. You fail, somebody else will go in and put another business in. But we're not talking about putting a business into an existing business location. We're talking about taking down a 273-year-old home, bulldozing the grass and trees all around it, and slapping in a structure to be run by somebody who's never owned a business. There's a big difference between not giving somebody a chance at a business or allowing somebody to completely change the character of an entire area.
Would you be happier if
First
this was
go.
somebody who's very experienced?
I wouldn't be happy in that case either, but I'm saying in that case, you might have a longer chance of success with a business as opposed to having a business fail, and then now you're looking in 3 or 4 years, what are you going to do with the property that's sitting there?
But that would still make you unhappy, right?
Yeah, that would still make me unhappy, but I think having somebody who's even more likely to, what's going to go in next? Are you going to have a repair shop, a gas station? What are you going to do with the building
you.
once it's outside of zoning?
Well, it's just residential. You good?
Yeah, Ian, thank you.
Ed, did you have something? I thought I'm going to Dick.
Yeah, I'm just going to be very brief, and I happen to agree with Sue. I think the argument about the validity or the lack of experience for a business owner is a specious argument, because that's very arbitrary and very subjective. But my question really lies around.
I'm really curious.
Because I believe, as Tom does, I think this is going to become legally very complicated. And my question is that in a daycare of this size, what is the typical revenue generator from a daycare of this nature? Maybe Ally, maybe even you can chime in to give me some feedback, because I don't have an idea in terms of. And where I'm going with this is I think that what's going to happen, and I'm just, maybe this is all conjecture at this point, but I think what's going to happen is the argument on his point, whoever the person is, they're going to argue this is going to affect my ability to make a lot of money. And that's where it's going to get very, very complicated for the town.
But our reason for wanting to take the house by eminent domain is not to block somebody from starting a business. It's to block somebody from destroying a historic home and changing what's already existing. My intent, I've never thought poorly of somebody who wants to open their own business. I have a lot of respect for entrepreneurs. I wish that I had it in me to do the same myself. A lot of respect for them. Where this is proposed is not appropriate, and it's an abuse of the Dover Amendment. It's not that I'm trying to block the business, it's that I'm trying to prevent 1350 North Street, that's been standing for 273 years, from being demolished and turned into something that.
I understand that, but that's your point of view.
Right. Well, that's the intent of the article.
The owner's going to have a different point of view, and that's where I fear it's really going to get very complicated very quickly.
Now, I understand your concern, but my intent is to preserve the home.
No argument.
And we have people who are willing to do it.
Right.
So.
Dick?
Yeah, just if we could refer back to last meeting, Joe Moraski made a great point and was trying to put some teeth in the law that actually applied to daycare. And when we challenged the building department, the zoning commissioner, he said the Dover Amendment is very difficult to appeal or defeat. And I think they're in a bad situation because I don't like eminent domain. I've talked to Jim Johnson about it. He's petrified of it. He's made every good effort he could make, though, to help the neighbors reach out to the owner. Guy just won't talk to them. But it's something that could happen to any one of us. If somebody were to be living in a property that somebody thinks could be marketed as another service. I think the town members of government are less effective on this than I would like them to be. It takes activism of a group to try to raise their own money and go after it in court. I feel for them greatly, and that's why I mentioned the thing about the house across the street from me, because I really think it could happen to me. But the realistic approach here is I don't think they have anywhere else to turn right now, and she's making a plea for eminent domain, which I wouldn't support. I would support maybe, I don't know, other towns give loans or this, that, but the guy won't come to the table to discuss loans or any other matter. So, again, I have talked to Jim. As of 2 weeks ago, he had reached out several times to the owner. And I don't know, I think Sam's had them in front of the board there, I think I read somewhere. I don't know how they've been at the hearings with the historical.
Well, I mean,
Do they
you want me to-
offer up any, can we hear?
Ask your question, you can answer it, Sam.
So you're asking how they've been in our committee?
Yeah, I mean, do they represent themselves and come in and talk
Yeah.
to you?
Yeah. They were initially represented by Mr. Mackey, the attorney.
Of Walpole,
Philip.
Phil Mackey.
Well, yeah, of Walpole, yes, that's correct.
Interesting.
Do they bring an attorney with them when they talk with you?
They did once.
And is maybe you can out-attorney them.
That's what I'm hoping.
We've got a couple on the board here.
I also just want to point out, not all of our Walpole Preservation Alliance members are from Walpole. We've got people from Westwood, we've got people from Norwood. It's people around our area love driving up North Street, especially in the summer. I will tell you, people are taking their motorcycles out, the convertibles out, they're taking their kids down, and it's not just to get the ice cream. They want to see the horses, they want to see the pretty houses. It's the historic homes. It will make a big difference.
Well, wrap up there.
Respectfully, Susan, I don't think that's a great stance to take about the flavor of your neighborhood going down. I mean, you got a different problem, and I understand. If I were there, I'd be fighting with every single one of you.
No, but it's not just Walpole, it's even
No,
around
but
the area.
I don't think you can include those people from other towns in your thinking.
Okay.
I think you've got to look at it like this Dover Amendment. It's a tough deal. We dealt with it with the Home for Little Wanderers and their expansion.
Well, they're closed now, so.
Yeah, that was huge, and I spent months with the Deval administration
Right.
on that, and, you know, they were able to pretty much do what they wanted.
That worked out well.
Andrew, you good?
I'm good.
You good? I'm gonna go to you, and
Question.
then I got a couple of comments.
Okay, what is the zoning up there? Are they
Rural.
rural, so they
Rural zoning.
can go in there, they're not restricted, because I know the
Because of
South
this
Street
amendment.
is limited manufacturing.
Yeah, because of the Dover Amendment. So like I said, Tracy couldn't
So
get
the
a permit
Dover
for a farm
Amendment-
stand on a farm, but
The Dover Amendment, correct me if I'm wrong, takes precedent over everything,
that's correct.
just like hypothetically a 40B.
It
If
takes
they don't
away the
like what
power
you're
of the
saying, they go to the
towns.
state, get their,
That's correct. Yeah.
And if you recall from our zoning
Okay,
meeting the other day,
yes.
it was actually in that section
Yep.
where the Dover Amendment goes across the board.
yep.
Right.
That's why I agree with Mr. Bowen that eminent domain is kind of radical and crazy, but it's all we got.
Oh, yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's all you got.
Still would like
I
to
have a
see town
comment.
council.
Unless you wanna,
No, I guess, what I'd say is go one of two directions here. Either make a motion and deal with this, but I think we should probably wait for town council's.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not taking a vote today, I can tell you
But
that, no.
do we have to, no, we can vote next Monday to make it in the book and at least vote. recommendation.
Correct.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so we can
Right.
leave it open entirely.
Yeah.
And hopefully hear from town council in the interim.
So, I just make a few comments. You know, I look at this, and I am an entrepreneur. I am a business owner. I've had my business here forever. I've been doing it for 25 years. Shameless plug. So I get that
business?
part, okay? But this is the ugliest thing on the planet. I mean, it's in the wrong place.
Yes.
Okay, and for me, it's, you know, like, I see all sides of the argument. I'm like, okay, I get the eminent domain thing, but of course the concern is, you know, the litigation fees, and then they could say, well, you know what, at $50 a kid a day times 100 kids, do the math. Right. I'm going to be out this much income, and then, you know, that's just a ball that keeps rolling. So I get the business owner's point of view. For us, though, I mean, there's got to be something that our legal team, your legal team, collectively a legal team can go after and find something that, you know, one, this is not congruent to the neighborhood. As a matter of fact, a lot of neighborhoods in our town, this just would not fly. You know what I mean? You know, safety issues. I know both chiefs have chimed in, and, you know, it's like, you're right, North Street, especially with all the snow that we had. Okay.
Right.
Forget it. I mean, you can't drive down North Street, let alone drop off a kid. So you got safety concerns. You're right. The thing with the Title V and all this hardscape, there's got to be something that the health department might be able to chime in. And then there's just zoning in general. Lord knows, we've been talking about zoning for the past 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Not that any of us are experts.
Right.
And I did have a quick word with our chairman of our planning board, but, you know, there's got to be some other way that's going to have more teeth, because if it goes down to, you know, just down this litigious route and the costs associated, I mean, I don't want this any more than you do.
Right.
And if all of a sudden it ends up happening and the town is out X amount of dollars and we all are out X amount of dollars, the donations, the efforts of your group, and we still got this albatross sitting on the corner, that would be a huge travesty. So I'm praying, I'm hoping that there's other avenues.
I'm also hoping
So-
that you know, I've spent, when did this come up? November. Pretty much every night since November,
bet.
lying awake trying to figure out how the heck to attack this, and I've come up with some pretty interesting angles to take. I won't even get into some of my craziness, but if we can't figure out something before May, then I think eminent domain might be our last hope.
Okay.
So.
Did you have a comment, Mark?
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant for the daycare, how far along are they in their permitting process?
She has not gotten a license to this point.
So she can't even go for a permit yet?
I'm not sure when she can go. I know that the last time I checked, she had inquired but had not applied for a license. Our attorney had looked into it too. Last time he checked, which I think was about a week ago, she still had not applied for a license. Her father, as the landowner, applied for, he's a limited liability corporation now, with the intent of leasing land to child care facilities, I think is how he phrased it. So yeah, so she doesn't have a license.
Okay. So where we don't know exactly how far she's gotten in her permit process, my question to the town administrator and the building commissioner is, when the 6 months expires, can we issue a conditional demo permit upon the business getting a building permit for their business, which will push it out another 6 months and we can find another option or another buyer or something to come forward with? I'm not sure, you know, what the town administrator or the building commissioner will come back. Can he do a conditional demo permit so that they cannot demo the building until they have a building permit in hand to replace that building?
That's a good
And that would delay the process at least a window of opportunity.
That's a good question. I don't have an answer to that.
All right, something to work on.
Yeah.
Ally?
Two things that just came up. A little bit about the income. So corporate daycares and that nature run on FTE. So they're looking for 75-80% FTEs to be making a profit for the most part. $50 a day, way too low. It's more than that.
Hey, you know, it's been a long time. I keep
That's low.
Ally, can you, FTE is a full-time enrollment?
It's a full-time enrollment. So they go by FTEs. They calculate just as such a hospital would calculate, patient enrollment by FTEs and things of that nature. The permitting process for a new building like this, you're not getting an EEC license to operate, to be able to begin enrolling and having children and taking the income in until the building is completely done. So South Street, it's still pending EEC licensure in their capacity. So that is still, this is where it would get hard. You're talking about someone arguing like, well, I can't make money then, this is my plans, this is my building, I have the permits. It still is going to take a long time for EEC to come out and provide them with a license, and you cannot begin collecting money, enrollment, having kids on site until you have that license in
Yeah,
hand.
but typically, how long does that process take?
It could take at least a year.
Yeah, well, that's
South Street's
a
almost
year in
two.
the scheme of things.
Right.
Not a
She's,
lot of time.
she's hoping for May, and that's Department of Early Education and Care coming through and,
So,
and
what's your
making it all
point?
happen. We're just talking about timeframes and like, can you delay? Can you get buildings? And then, where would we hold back them having the ability to start a business? But they're also working not only with the town of Walpole and permitting and building, they're also working with the Department of Early Education and Care and going for that license to be able to operate this business. It's a little different,
Come up with said number in this so-called litigious
It's all
state.
based on square footage. So they have an idea of what their license would be based on the square footage of the classrooms and things. Everything, infant rooms are square footage, toddler rooms are square footage per child, preschool, gross motor space and things like that, outdoor space. So they definitely would have an idea of how many children they could take care of in that, and that would be part of their building design.
It's 100 children.
Right, and that's purely based on EEC regulations and square footage per child and their age.
Cool. Anything else? All right, so we're gonna hold off because we want to give you guys some more time. I believe, don't you? Some get together. I'll give you that.
Wednesday.
I'll give you the camera.
Yeah. Hey, thanks.
Hey, if I'm gonna do a shameless plug, I'll give you one.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so the Walpole Preservation Alliance has a bunch of members, including myself, running for a town meeting. So if you're in precinct 8 and you want to come out, or you just want to come and have a drink with us at Conrad's on Wednesday night, we'll be there at 7:30 in the
Supporting our local business too.
Yeah,
like
supporting
that.
local business, absolutely.
Gotta take care of Walpole.
Thank you very much for remembering. Yeah, so
right.
we're happy to have you. There will be free hors d'oeuvres, cash bar.
Of course. Yeah, Bobby's not gonna give away alcohol. All right. We good?
Anybody else have any questions for me?
Yeah, we're gonna get council's opinion
Yeah.
before
Okay.
we kind of pose a vote, and then maybe we'll look down an avenue that maybe Mark suggested or something. I'm
Okay.
certainly gonna have a conversation with the town administrator also, so.
Great, thank you. I appreciate all of you taking the
Thanks
time
for
to listen
staying
to me.
late.
And
Thank you.
yeah, no,
Thank
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all of you for doing
All
that.
right, have a good night. All right, so
Anybody here?
second night, well, not. Well, let me ask you guys, how many watched the planning board? Planning
I was
board?
there for an hour and a half, but I didn't watch the whole thing.
Okay, did anybody go back and watch the presentation from John and Jack, the John and Jack show? Anybody watched it?
Yes.
Okay, just curious. I did the same thing,
No, good to know.
you know.
Prep.
Yeah. Well, my question about this, whether we're going to have a representative in front or not, is I don't know how much more,
OSRD
John
land.
would be talking about said article. And I know that, Jack's here in shorts, gotta love it.
Spring is
Not
here.
that warm, Jack.
It's spring.
Really?
It's nice.
Warm enough.
I think we were just kind of talking. I mean, I don't believe that John's going to come and talk about it. I mean, I think we've all seen when he came in front of your committee. I believe, Jack, feel free to have a seat or come on in. I believe your committee voted. Was it 005? Yeah. 5 against. Right. I don't know how much more information about the particular article. I mean, it seemed to me that a lot of stuff was omitted for a reason. And hi.
Hi. My name is Carol Lewicki. I'm actually the developer.
Oh.
And the one, John is the sponsor, but it was actually my idea.
It was your idea.
Yes.
Have a seat. I know. Do you live here?
I don't.
You don't. Okay. All right. So. Yeah. Can you repeat your name for the group?
Spell it.
Lewicki.
Lewicki. Okay.
Sons.
Gotcha. Now, I just so you know, this is not the public hearing, but I was kind of curious. Did you come in front of the planning board at all?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not.
Oh, spell it?
Yes.
Okay. Can we get an accurate spelling of your name, because I have difficulty
Sure.
at anything under 14 letters.
It's Lewicki.
Lewicki.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. So
We're-
you wrote this and John
Well,
sponsored it.
I took your bylaw that you already had, basically, and there's not a lot that's omitted. It's almost word for word, almost. And the reason why I asked John to put this on is because we're hoping to purchase a parcel of land, actually 2 of them, on Lincoln Road in Walpole, and it's over on the Norfolk end of town. The property is 30 acres total, both parcels, and the frontage is on Lincoln. It goes back deep, but behind this property, at the back property line, is the Walpole Sportsmen's Association. So we hired an engineer, and he did a preliminary layout of lots. There were 24 house lots. And that was legitimately following your bylaws, is what he thought he would be able to put on these parcels. And it's a fine layout. It's just that with the gun club being at the back of the property, we thought we could do a better project if we pulled the homes just a little bit closer to Lincoln, giving the backland, leaving that open for noise, maybe for safety, and also trying to be a good neighbor to the Sportsmen's Association also. I know that they were fearful initially of homes going up and complaints coming in. So we thought if we could pull the homes a little bit further away from them, it's 30 acres, it's a pretty big piece of land, that it might help a little bit. So that's why we met on December 26th with Jim Johnson and also the building commissioner, I forget his name. And we left the meeting and we thought we had some options. They had mentioned that we could do the AQV, Age Qualified Village, or we could do the multiple residences on one lot.
Think closer.
So we were pretty excited about that. They asked if we could have our engineer redraw the subdivision, showing like a cluster.
Speak up.
Oh, sorry. Showing a cluster development. So when we called the engineer to do the layout for the AQV, he said, nope, you can't do that. It's not allowed. So I was thinking, that's funny, because we just met with Jim 2 days ago, and he said that it was an option. So I said, all right, well, how about the multiple residences on one lot? And he said, nope, you can't do that either. So I was a little bit surprised, and he emailed me back, our engineer, and he said, if you don't want to do a traditional subdivision, your only option is a comprehensive 40B. So we said, okay, so then we started looking at that. And I know that Walpole is under their minimum for the affordable housing. So we did meet with a fellow who does the permitting for comprehensive 40Bs, and it's still absolutely a possibility. It's just that I understand from the last one that was done in Walpole, it was very time consuming. So who wants to be tied up for years on this? So whether or not we explore that, probably not, but we thought that we could do a better project if the homes were further away from the gun club. That's why we thought we would propose this.
Okay.
Me?
Conrad?
Well, everything sounded fine until I heard the 40B. I'm tired. I've been doing this 26 years, and I've had everybody come in, and they don't get what they want. I want everything. If I don't, I'm going to get a 40B. I'm sick of the threats. If you want a 40B, go do your 40B. Very simple. And a matter of fact, why would you meet with Jim Johnson, the building commissioner? You should have met with Liz Dennehy, was here, what you can and can't do. For this, what was left out purposely. They left out the fact that you didn't have to save any trees and you could level the land. Right now, their business, I know a little bit about you guys do sand and gravel, and you could sell that right now, minimum $2 a yard. You probably got 1.5 million yards of it up there. It's about 50 foot high to the center. So you take that out, you're going to mine it. And, you know, I think this came because in Norfolk, across through the river is Stop River, and that's what these clowns are doing for the 40B. They want to mine the gravel so that they have a better project. You know, you take these 40Bs and then shove them when they want to make their money off of that. So basically, the way this was written is they could come in and go right from Lincoln Street, flat in, right up to the gun club, mine the gravel. But why they could mine it, because it's going to take you a couple of years to get rid of the gravel, 1.5 million yards. Even Tresca isn't going to take that much in a year, so it could take a couple of years. So you move your houses over here. Nice, while you're mining all this. That's all this is about. But for someone, and not only would it be just there, it'd be anywhere in the town this is qualified for. So this just isn't one project. The other thing I object to is someone coming in, and you can see I'm getting a little pissed about this, is someone from North Attleboro just rolling in here and expect us to roll over so they can make a ton of dough and just completely destroy the woods up there. The fact that the applicant who put it in isn't here is troubling too. And there's also, if you look down the list who signed this, not one of the signature people are here either, one of the sponsors. So with all that being said, it's, you know, are we here to make money for someone coming in out of town who's starting the 40B? I don't think so. The other problem you have is there's spelling mistakes all over the place. Even if this was a great article, it would have a problem. And then you have a couple of sentences that just stop. It's kind of like your car going along like they do now with the lights, just stops.
I know, I've read it.
Where's it go? So those are all the issues. But it's very, very interesting when John left that out. And he didn't have a real great thing to say, because part of the open space is open space is supposed to save open space, not cut the mature trees down, not take the hills down. So, as you can see, that's why we voted against it 5-0. It wasn't even close, and the discussion didn't go that long. So, but as you can tell, when I hear the 40B,
Obviously,
yeah, and that was just a response from our engineer, said that that's the only thing you could do other than traditional subdivision.
You can do a traditional subdivision, but you don't want to because it's not worth the money.
No, it's not. It's not that at all. It's.
And I will say one more about 40B, because I'm going to cut you off.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Take a ride up Baker Street.
My ratings are going up, kids. So
take a ride down Baker Street. That thing's dead in the water. And that's a 40B in Sharon, right next to the golf course. They knocked it down. So if they were all profitable, whatever, they'd be popping up everywhere. But
thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have a question, Carol. When you're talking about moving the houses away from the gun club, what are you talking about in terms of distances from where the original proposal was to the revised proposal in terms of feet?
Yeah, I don't really have the distances because we never had our engineer do the layout because it wasn't an option. There was no other option. It's either do the traditional layout in Walpole, or as it is right now, we could do a 40B, and that's not a threat at all. That's just a fact.
So, okay, so let me revise that question. So how far, if the subdivision goes back, you're saying it's 20 units, correct? 20 lots.
We could lay out 24 house lots.
24 house lots. So how close are those house lots to the the Sportsman's Club?
I think it's like acre zoning, so they're like 1 acre lots.
Yeah, the reason why I asked
So,
this question.
but the thing is, with the open space residential development, the way I understand it is 40% of it has to be open space. So out of 30 acres, 40% of that has to be left. I mean, and it is open. I know what open space is. I'm on the open space committee in my town, so I am all for saving trees. This property is unique. It's unique in the town of Walpole. There's an esker on the property, so it's a challenge to even walk the property because it's on a grade like this. So to do any type of development, the first thing is major earth removal. That's the very first thing. And if it's not going to be developed, then is the land worthless or useless to the owners? Because it shouldn't be. It's zoned residential. You can definitely put residences in there, whether it's 24 or whether it's more of a smart development and it's less asphalt and they're a little bit, they're clustered, they're tighter together. We have options with the different.
I understand that. The reason why I asked the question is I'm just wondering if you've ever lived in a house near a gun and rod club.
No, I haven't.
Well, I have friends who live one, and I'm going to tell you, I don't care if you're 50 feet or 250 feet away.
It probably won't make a difference.
It won't make any difference at all. It won't make any difference at all.
But will it make a difference to the gun club?
In what respect?
Full disclosure, I'm on the board of directors from the Walpole Sportsman Association.
Your name?
Megan Hoffman.
Hi, Megan.
Hi. If the homes are within 500 feet of our ranges, we have the potential that we'll have to shut them down or move them. Because
Okay.
Massachusetts general law
Okay.
notes that you cannot fire any firearm within 500 feet of a dwelling.
Okay.
Gotcha.
I'm just saying, but you can,
It does have an effect on us.
It does have an effect, yes.
A great effect on us.
Yes.
But also has an effect on the homeowners, because
It does absolutely,
Yeah.
because people that live in Medfield can hear us shooting.
Absolutely.
Currently, our grandfathered in rules where we can shoot from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. So,
It's great if you're a homeowner.
I have no problem with it.
I would.
It's great. You kidding? Nobody's gonna break into my house with all that gunshot going on. Tommy?
I have to say, eventually you tune out the gun sounds, because we've lived there for years.
Yeah.
My concern is the people who move in and suddenly think that the whole town should change for them. But my bigger concern is open space has for decades, these open space bylaws have for decades been sold to us as how great they are for the town. Generally, I have to say, I don't think they've worked out so great for us. Quite often, we've ended up with beautiful open space of detention basins and all kinds of things. It's for the developer. And the town's gonna end up with a half a mile shorter of road to pave in 35 years. What concerns me about this is this seems to be less an open space developing bylaw than a strip mining bylaw. Because all of the things that were noted for years to maintain the space, tree diameters and various things.
Well, there aren't that many. You could probably count maybe 3, maybe 4 changes that I made to your previous bylaw.
One can be substantive.
And
3 or
it
4 can be very.
It can be, but the trees are coming down regardless because of the uniqueness of the land form. The trees are all coming down regardless. There are no trees that are going to be saved. And I'm the one that's proposing it, so of course I'm going to make it the way that I want it for this particular project. So
Yes.
I'm not going to propose something that I wouldn't be able to work with.
Yeah, which unfortunately is the strip mining bylaw.
Well,
That Lincoln Road, I walk that property, I walk that road every week. This will take that and make it a beautiful strip mine for a couple years.
well, it's going to be regardless of what you
Maybe,
do. To
maybe not.
develop it, it is going to be mined.
Well, the
and
developer needs to
substantial.
deal with the existing, let's face it, there's a reason you want to change the laws. And it's not, I'm a real estate guy. It's not for the wonderful benefit of the whole world. It's because it helps your project. I get it, that's fine. But I'm on the other side, and what does that do for Walpole? And I don't think the promotion of strip mining the site.
You
is a
keep
great
saying
thing for
strip
me.
mining, but that's happening regardless.
I
That has
don't
nothing to do
necessarily
with
agree with
cluster.
you.
That has nothing to
It
do with cluster.
certainly happens when we
No,
eliminate all of
and
the
what we
rules.
do for Walpole is we create house lots that have more value. That's what it does for Walpole.
For 40 years, people have been selling me that line. And it's just like the Ginsu knives that have to be sold. by
Again,
midnight.
it's laid out for 24 already.
Just a point, okay? You can't strip mine. If you're gonna do this conventional subdivision, you have to go through our rules and regulations, and we don't let you strip mine. You have to make it fit to the contours. You read that, the subdivision control. You just can't go in there and knock them down.
No, you can't, but the way that this property, the formation of this property, and also where the entrance to this property is off of Lincoln is a much lower grade. You come right off of Lincoln, and then there's like a mountain. It's like the face of a mountain is right in front of you. So I mean, how we would do it is, of course, we would match the grade to Lincoln Road. Also, this property abuts a deer field. Again, from Deerfield, at the very end of Deerfield, I don't think there's anyone here that could even walk up the hill at the end of Deerfield onto this land. So you've got to match the grade at Deerfield. Then there's an easement over to one property line going way out back to the Walpole Sportsman's Club. And again, it's at the very bottom of the mountain. So you're matching those three grades. You need to come off of Deerfield, to go back out onto Lincoln, and you need to maintain the easement for the Walpole Sportsman's Club at the back of the property. All of them at much lower grades.
Dick?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Did it come up at the planning board who the property owner is that's selling?
There are two property owners.
Yeah, can I ask who they are?
The first one is La Civita, is 15 acres, and the other 15 acres is John Hassenjager.
Hassenjager.
Yep, the property is split, right?
So he actually was gonna sponsor this?
He did
and sell it
sponsor.
to you?
No, well,
Pretty good,
he
huh?
did, but he didn't, it wasn't his idea.
Yeah.
We wanted to do what we thought we thought we had a nice idea, but
Okay.
again.
In respect to both the developers, and, you know, I've gone round and round with Joe on Roscommon and some of these other developments. The thing that is really bothering me about this is it seems like absolute abuse of the zoning to make it beneficial for you.
But the zoning is residential.
No, I understand, but if you build it and build everything away from the gun club, and that's the 40 acres of open space and everything, it's got to benefit you more than it's going to benefit the town. And I'd have to say that I actually, now that I see this coming up again, because we had OSRD, and I was on the planning board when we did the Roscommon, and, you know, probably fought with Joe a little bit. I thought the concept was okay. But once the thing went away, and when I heard it was coming, and I didn't know who owned it. I had a suspicion, and now I know.
But what does that matter?
Huh?
What does that matter? Who owns it?
It doesn't matter, but let's put it this way. I look at the sponsor of this particular thing. You can't sponsor it because you're not a town person.
Had I known, I do have a PNS on it, so I think, I believe the law says that I could have sponsored it. I didn't know
I
at the
can
time.
understand why.
So you have full
I don't know La Civita. I do know John. I'm not trying to start trouble with John or anything. I'm a little surprised by what I'm hearing, although not completely. I don't want Susan to think I'm totally stupid.
Well,
Was that necessary?
I'm glad you came in because, you know, kind of clarified a couple of things. I mean, you know, we've talked a lot about zoning, you know, and I think as an advisory board, we also have to look at what's right for the town. I mean, if this bylaw does not get approved, that really limits what can be done with the land out there, and frankly, I'm totally cool with that. You know,
you know, the zoning is really, our bylaws are supposed to protect the people and do the things that's good for the people, not the individual. And I'm not saying you per se, thank you for coming in, thank you for taking a few shots here and there, but you don't own it right now. There's two individuals that own it. Obviously, your company would benefit if this went through. And again, being a business owner, I get that. But the article itself, I think, is, you know, besides it not being written well, and there's a lot of omissions that would make it could easily be, you know, called a strip mining law, if you will. You can call it a lot of different things, but I'm certainly not in favor of it, guys. So, Jack?
Another quick point, so it doesn't get lost, it's just not here, it's anywhere in the town. So who knows where this could appear?
Yeah.
I mean, this passed, all of a sudden, somebody's knocking this down and this
Well,
Esther and all
that's
that.
ultimately a concern, because again, we have to look out for the entire town. Now, this was written, as you said,
Right,
for
and
one
again, if-
particular.
if we didn't
excuse
have
me,
a non-residential-
Excuse me, this was written for one particular location, but we have to think of the rest of the town, because if you can go in and start just hacking out any tree that's, you know, any tree really, because what is it, it's above 20 inches is now gone. So, you know, any tree that's out there, just, it's gone, because it's been taken out of the bylaw. Well, then that applies to a lot of other parcels, and that's gonna affect a lot of other people. And I personally have a problem with that, so, you know.
It certainly is not ideal. It's not the piece of land that I would say we've got to save that piece of land, because the land will be disturbed. There's no question about it. What you would be left with for open space will have been disturbed. There's no question about that.
It's not gonna get disturbed at all right now.
No, but we can put 24 house lots on it.
But you can't disturb the land, you can't come in and hack trees down and this and that, you gotta make it fit the land, that's how the subdivision control works. It has to
Right.
be in harmony with the environment that you're doing.
That's right. But what I'm saying is
Yeah.
for the open space, I can see it's not prime
do you mean?
open space land that you would look for to save. So it's not ideal. Again, we were thinking about our abutter behind us who is a non-residential use. So it's a little bit unique in that way also, is that you've got zoning for residential, but yet your largest abutter behind you is a non-residential use. So,
Talking about the club?
yeah, the Sportsman's Club.
Oh, okay. They do a lot for this
I
community,
was gonna
trust
say-
me.
I was gonna say, what's the benefit of the gun club to the town of Walpole?
The benefit?
Yeah,
There's a lot of benefit.
Really?
I'm just asking.
Oh, yeah.
I'm asking the
I
question.
don't.
Well, personally, they sponsor the Troop 97, which, you know, is a fantastic organization. Boy Scouts.
Boy Scouts, okay.
So, there's one.
I'm asking the question.
Right, and
The other
we
thing
were
is, they were there
trying.
before zoning. They've been
Okay.
there forever.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
Zoning
that's.
grew
I'm sure.
around them.
Oh, I'm sure, I'm sure.
We're not trying to cause them any problems. We never have been. You know, it is what it is. I mean, so.
If we wanted to make a motion for,
No action?
no, or is it no action? Or
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Would you
Make
like
a
to make a
motion.
motion?
For no action?
We got a second by Sue. Excellent. Any further discussion? No? Do we have a vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thanks for coming in.
You're welcome.
All right. 9:30, you guys are killing my record. But Jack, thanks for coming, because my ratings are going up.
Jack, a question. If they were doing development, do you have zoning laws that would prevent any type of mining prior to, as opposed to the big dig that's going on in Norfolk right now?
Subdivision control is you're supposed to make it blend with everything. They can't mask it as a mining operation. I had a little experience in this. People I worked with years ago in Rhode Island, they bought a big plot in Smithfield. They wanted to rock. They were blasting ledge for 10 years. And they never built a building. Because what a lot of them will do is they'll mask it as a subdivision. If you get $3 a yard, and you're talking $1.5 million yards, that's a nice payday.
Sure is.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jack. I got couple.
Want to stay? No, no, he might start talking.
Good night, Joe.
Good night, Joe.
Jack.
Good to see
Good,
you.
Joe and Jack.
All right. So, as you know, we don't have a meeting Thursday because
We are
Council
going to
on
be at
Aging.
the country.
That's
club
right,
for
we're gonna be at the
Council of
Country Club,
Aging.
Council of Aging fundraiser, get together.
Bring your checkbook.
Bring- Be sure to eat lots of bread before you come, soak up, the fluid. Anyways,
Cash bar.
cash bar, yes. And then I was reminded about, who are these folks?
What?
I can't read your writing.
Norfolk County Retirement.
Monday, right?
Well,
April 5th.
so Timothy's not gonna come, but send somebody, and I wanted to make sure, is this, because I know John asked for it, but, I don't know if they'll be here for that, so I'm posing out to you guys. Do you want a representative from them to come in and talk? So if you think that's beneficial,
Was this gonna be on
Yeah.
Monday?
No, no.
April 5th.
Thursday, April
I mean, we got OPEB, so if we
And
look
and
at our,
financial
if we look at our,
It's an assessment anyway.
yeah, it's an assessment, I mean, it's basically, it's an invoice, guys, which we already approved anyways, but if
that's
you
why-
wanted, if you wanted some further explanation,
Yeah.
if you want Timothy to send somebody
There'll be
to
15 minutes at the
explain it, do
beginning of the meeting and send them.
Yeah, it'll be
Okay,
quick.
sure.
It'll be quick.
you want it?
Yes.
Okay, because if you say no, then no, okay.
I mean, when people ask us why we just approve
Yeah.
the invoice, we might want to be able to say,
Yeah.
even at least every couple of years, we ask them about it.
No, I'm cool with it, All right, so, can you make that happen?
Okay.
Do you want your notes back, because I can't read them? Nobody can read my stuff.
Be nice to the.
So that means Monday, the 2nd. We got a busy day. So,
Any unvoted articles get voted?
yeah, so we got stabilization, OPEB.
Is that the 5th?
No, Monday the 2nd.
Second.
Monday the 2nd.
Yeah. Oh, no, OPEB we're doing the
OPEB
5th,
is
right?
already-
Because that's when
Yes.
the
Okay.
actuaries.
So it would be snow and ice.
Yeah, we got snow and ice. Excuse me, Joe. Hey, Chief, any thoughts on, no, it's okay. Joe, you can jump back in, you just can't speak. Any luck on firefighters contract, or by Monday the 2nd, or? Potentially, okay.
Maybe.
I saw that.
We'll leave it open.
Board of Selectmen.
I mean, any
Entertaining it.
unvoted articles got to get voted, either recommendation at town meeting or an action.
Right.
So,
Okay, thanks.
We have to do something.
yeah, we have to do something.
Yes, we
on it.
gotta do something, so, and then I would imagine that JJ will have any little, final adjustments, budget assessments and
the
stuff
s-
like
And the
that.
school's going to come in for their last update.
That's right, and the school's
yeah.
coming in for their last, yes, Sue.
What's the deal with the High Street Tower?
That's the communication leasing
Yeah, I know,
agreement.
but.
They were working that one out, and it hadn't been finalized as of our.
That's all, it
Last
was, it's
discussion.
really
So
just, it's our renewal of our cellular lease, that's
So
all.
that's, is that gonna be probably a recommendation at town meeting?
Jim thought he was going to have it done this week.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So,
All right.
yeah.
And that might just be a, yeah, okay, here it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, all right. So, so we're good for nothing this Thursday. We got a busy next Monday.
And
You know, good,
educational-
and then, do I get a last motion?
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Third.
Aye.
Thank you very much.